bad at doing PowerPoints. It was such an anxiety for me because I didn't get an early start on the, on the slides. Because it was so hard for me to get away from Columbus. When you got somewhere to go, and it just seemed like so many things were happening this past week with Takeoff from the Migos getting killed. And the people started calling me from the media and wanted me to say something. And, it was just a lot going on last week. And it was hard for me to get my mind wrapped around my PowerPoint because I'm slow and I'm old on technology type stuff. I know I got a daughter that she'll whip up a PowerPoint and be done. Are y'all like that too? Y'all probably don't even use PowerPoint. What are people using now? Y'all still do PowerPoints? Amplified points. Mm-hmm. Okay. Some more visuals. I'll try to do better next time. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. Because you know what? In the past, people told me that I had too much text. So I went too far to the extreme. No text. Okay. Have a little bit of text up there. Okay. Thank you for that. Because my hip hop class is starting in January. And I try not to do too many presentations in that class because it's about making the students teach too. Because everybody in there is already like an education student. So I give them assignments, to talk about what they know about hip hop and how it relates to critical analyses of the world. So they look at the narratives and they talk about the images. And our upcoming class is about hip hop, Black Lives Matter, and queer black feminism. So Black Lives Matter philosophy is that, I think I said a little bit of it in my presentation, is that when you elevate the most minoritized and the most marginalized groups, that group, when that group gets liberated, everybody else will have to be liberated, right? So we're looking at how, because Black Lives Matter was started by 3 black queer women, and they were using black queer feminist ideas or radical black feminist ideas for the Black Lives Matter movement. How much of that is being manifested in hip hop today? So people like Lil Nas X, I'm sorry, Chica. I don't know if you all have heard of Chica. She's a black, I think she's non-binary. I don't know if they use she. Maybe they're non-binary or bisexual. Anyway, I got to get it together before January. But anyway, I'm so excited to do that class because we've been doing the hip hop literacies class and the hip hop literacies conference since 2011, and we've never centered queer people. And I was like, we got to do better. We got to do better because we've centered. I'm really focused on black women and girls because that's my research area. But you have to come outside your research area to create solidarity with other groups, So we've done not everybody. We've done a lot of different, social justice approaches to hip hop. I think we had globalized black, what do we call it? Black, I can't remember. We've had so many different themes. But I'm so happy that we're doing queer black feminism and queer people in hip hop to see, how many people are now being able to come out as artists in hip hop and be accepted by people as an LGBTQ person, not having to hide that they are whatever they are. So I'm very excited about that. Has anybody in here seen the series? What channel was it on? Anyway, P-Valley. Anybody ever seen P-Valley? I'm so excited for us to do like a P-Valley unit in my class because I felt like P-Valley had a lot of queer affirmativeness in it. Um, and also, there was just a lot in there that humanized people who have been like seen as, um, ratchet or, uh, you know, somehow their humanity is lesser than because they're a stripper. I thought that Katori Hall, who's the writer, I thought she did a great job of humanizing, for example, the lead character, Uncle Clifford. Because I know a lot of Uncle Clifford type people in my community that I came from. So it was just good to see that person be like in a leadership role in that series, and also to help people to, if you wanted to have an open mind, I think that it could help some people. So I'm be real interested in how people in my class, when we do the P Valley unit, how people are responding to that, especially what is his name? Lil Murder's character. People know what I'm talking about in P Valley. Lil Murder's character. So a couple people in here. I really like how they amplified how it's the strippers that give credibility to the rappers. Like if they don't like your music, you ain't on, right? Or what did they call it? It was a word that they called it. I can't think of it right now. But anyway, I learned so much from P Valley because I've been out of the street life and just around too much sanitization. So it was an opportunity for me to look at P Valley look at like queer. I want to call it the underside, because I lived in that kind of underside of a society for a long time. And when I was living in it, I wasn't analyzing it and thinking about it, right? It was just, there's trans people that work out here too. And hey girl, how you doing? Hey girl, is that the tricks riding tonight or whatever was going on? You wasn't really thinking about their sexuality or what life was like for them. I know I felt marginalized as a black young woman and young girl out there, but I can't imagine how they felt, because it's like different, really different for trans people. And that was something that I never thought about until later, in the last few years. Like, wow, man, damn, I never thought about how even more of them got killed than black women. More. And people are all right with it. No outrage, and that's kind of sad, because that's somebody's child. That's somebody's family member, But anyway, I'm going to stop talking and let y'all ask me some questions. I'm just kind of free-flowing and thinking about some stuff that I'm excited about. What are y'all excited about?
So could I ask you about your book and like what the
Of course. The process. I know I used to ride back through my old neighborhood and places that I lived and worked and hung out in a lot when I was writing it. I called a lot of people to try to check on some things that I recollected. Like I had some people's names wrong. Things like that. My own type of research of trying to even find certain people to get them to, let me know if I got certain stories right. And there were a couple of things I got wrong that are in my book. And there are a couple of things that are wrong in there, but that's all right. That's all right. And people would call me and tell me, like, no, this was so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, okay. But it kind of didn't matter about the names sometimes, because I'm changing the names anyway. But yeah, there was a lot of crying. It was a lot of, it was therapeutic to write that book. Very therapeutic, thinking about a lot of people who got killed or, who are just not, doing well now at all. People who, like, just went to the penitentiary their whole lives. Like my first boyfriend, and I write about that in the book. His name is Andrew in the book. That's not his real name. But anyway, I tried my best to humanize him because every time I would tell people about him, they would be like, F him. He wasn't no good. He's the one who got you into this life, you know. But he had a lot of childhood trauma. Like his mother was given to his father when she was 15 years old. A lot of people down south back in the day would do that, give a young girl to an old man. And this old man who was his father became his father. He was an alcoholic and very abusive, and all he did was pumped her up full of babies and beat on her and stayed drunk all the time. So she ran away. His mother ran away and, got away from his father. And so him and his 5 brothers, they kind of grew up, on their own. They kind of they were with their father, but he was not really able to take care of them like he should have been because he was an alcoholic. And I remember him telling me how they used to kill pigeons sometimes and cook the pigeons because they didn't have anything else to eat. And so they just became like thieves. I mean, they could steal the sugar out of Kool-Aid. They could steal. They could steal. And, I tried to humanize him by telling his story because it wasn't just like he was a bad person. He just had a lot of bad things happen in his life, and he learned how to survive, and he was kind of like just going in and out of every boys' institution in the state of Ohio. He had been in like all of them, him and his brothers. And then they graduated from being in the boys' institutions to being in the adult institutions. And I remember when I was with him, how I got out of the street life for a while is he got 4 to 25 years in prison. And I was kind of glad, because it was hard being a 7th grader and being a hooker. So that kind of gave me a chance to finish middle school. We called it junior high back then when he went to prison. And the next time I saw him, I was probably in my early 20s or something like that. But all his life, he was just in and out of prison. In and out of prison. And I think about so many young black men and men of color who have just cycled in and out of prison. And so many people write them off as that, these young black and boys of color, they don't want to be anything. But they've had so many traumas, and so many different, some getting gangs or whatever to have a means of survival. And I thank God for reading about Nipsey Hussle, because he talks about that in his stuff, in his music. And, when a lot of things that I've read about Nipsey Hussle, he talks about how he joined the gangs in L.A. for protection. Because in his neighborhood, if you weren't in a gang, you were like open, you could have open season on you, So people don't understand the ins and outs of how a lot of young men of color and young black boys, their whole life gets snuffed away from like being in these cycles of having to hustle, having to survive, joining gangs or not joining gangs, and then you also taking a chance on your life. It's like a catch-22. And one of the things that I mentioned in my talk was the Black Studies perspective talks about how the white world has been violently anti-black for over 5 or 6 centuries. And how even though it may look like black on black crime, it's orchestrated. It's just another form of white supremacy, that these lives are disposable. So they're not centered in, we're going to care about this community and right the wrongs of enslavement that are still manifested in their lives. It's not like that. It's like, get an education, but the education is Eurocentric or not focused on you or not speaking to, what's going on in your world. So a lot of what we teach people is not engaging their life experience. I think that's why I'm so big on engaging people's life experiences, because if we do that, just like how you all are in here, you all a diverse group of people, you could change, a lot of the institutionalized things that are not, that you experienced and yet that you don't want the next generation or people that you teach to experience. I'm just going on and on. Somebody else talk.
So you spoke about how important support is and having
It
support, and
is.
how for you, you were lucky enough that your mother was that support for you. She took you back in after you in the streets and stuff like that. As an educator, what can we do to be that support for our students?
All you can do is what you can do, but do what you can do. You know, a lot of my students, especially my white students, they feel like they don't know how to make that connection. And I tell them, just do what you can do. Let them know that you care. Let them teach you about who they are. Maybe you could figure out a way to support them instead of coming with the idea that you got to teach them. Of course, you got to teach your subject matter, but if you can't engage them, you got to figure out how to engage them, how to learn from them and with them. I think that's one way to, get involved. And plus, they're going to see that you care. It means a lot to people when they see that you care. It means a lot. Just got to start somewhere. That's the main thing, is starting and letting them know that you care. Did I see enough? There you go. Hi, online student.
Hi, UNR fellows. This is from Cassandra. She asked, how do you have conversations like the ones throughout the presentations with someone who refuses to listen? So I think how do you push equity conversations when you have colleagues or sometimes parents who are, don't want to engage?
All you can do is what you can do. I think, if you're in control of the room, you know what I mean? You control as much as you can of the conversation, and I think people need to hear it, over and over. They need to be reading things. They need to be having experiences outside of their norm. Be uncomfortable in the room. People need to be uncomfortable sometimes. We can't make people comfortable. You're not going to always be privileged in the room. You got to learn how to be humble sometimes and listen. I listen a lot, especially because I'm 62 years old. My students teach me about hip hop. I teach them critical theories. They teach me hip hop, and we work together. And they teach a lot of the classes. You got to let other people teach. And one thing that I've learned is those, difficult people in the room, they need help. Because if they stay in your class, if you're in a space and you're in control of the class, if they stay, because a lot of times people look at my syllabus and they don't come back. And that's okay, because it wasn't for you that, at that point in your life, right? You're not ready to hear anything different than what you've been hearing. You want to get affirmed in your white supremacy. The rest of the university is open to you. But in here, we're critiquing white supremacy even within ourselves. I think the person that has the courage to stay in the room, even though they're uncomfortable, they will need other people in the room eventually. That's why I make people work together sometimes too. Because the other students, it becomes community, communities of people working. Because it's going to take a lot. It takes a lot to overcome what we're up against. So I hope I said something that can encourage that person to, I hate to say stand your ground, but you know what I mean. Stand your ground has become tainted. Anybody else want to say anything? Y'all just want me to keep talking? So tell me about your experience in this program. I mean, it sounds like a great program that you all are in. Yeah. I mean, I'm just loving the diversity of the people in the room. I'm used to being like, in a room where everybody is white and it's like 2 or 3 Asians and 2 black people or something like that. At OSU, I'm not used to, and I love it. I love this diversity. So that's a cool thing, this program. So are you guys new in the program, or is this like your first semester, or the first year? Okay. And is the program 1 year or 2 years? So how long is it? How long? 2 years. Okay. And then you'll be, so are you teaching now? Some people are teaching now. Okay. Okay. Y'all excited? Ah! I know. I remember being that new teacher and being terrified. But it's cool. I think once they get to know you, you know, that's the whole thing, is building relationships with people where they feel like they know you and they can talk to you. That's so important. Because you can't just go in there like with your curriculum. You got to sometimes got to trade off on your curriculum too. I've done that a lot. Sometimes you got to scrap what you thought you were going to do and do something different because of who's in the room. Because everything doesn't work for everybody. Got to give sometimes. Give and take. So I don't know what else to say if y'all don't ask me something. Has there anybody in here who has read my book? Not yet? Okay. Oh, only Madeline. You don't count. No, that's not right. That's not right. That's not right. That's my Ohio homie. Thank you.
7th grade took her to having a PhD.
That you gotta read the book. That's a long story. But it's a long story. I tried to give you the 3-minute version in my presentation. But I think that it started with being spiritually wounded. You know, when I think it was 5, my parents had a real bad fight. And they had never fought in front of us, never argued in front of us, anything. I had one brother. And my mother and my brother went to a Cub Scout meeting. And my mother had cooked dinner. And, she told my father, oh, dinner's on the stove, blah, blah, blah. We'll be back later. And all I remember is I was asleep. And I woke up to a lot of commotion and chaos. And when I flung open my door, because I heard a lot of cursing and yelling and hollering and noise and everything, my mother grabbed a pot of boiling hot dogs off the stove and threw it onto my father. Some of it got on her and burned her up too. And my father grabbed a ketchup bottle, and it was the old school Heinz. I don't know if y'all know those hard bottles. My father broke one of those bottles on my mother's head. And ketchup and blood was everywhere. And I was just traumatized. My brother and I were screaming and crying and trying to break up the fight. And from that fight on, I never felt normal or good. And I felt like something was wrong with my family. And plus, my mother and father never hugged again after that day. They never slept together in the same room again. They were like roommates. They never left each other. And so, in a way, I didn't know that my home was broken. But I did know, but I didn't know. You know how you hear people say, oh, they're from a broken home. That's what they used to call it back in the day. I don't know what they call it now, if they still use that terminology. But I was broken, and my family was broken to me. And I didn't like myself at all. And I was mad at my parents because I felt like they messed up our family. And I was just spiritually wounded. You know, some kids feel things differently, or, like my brother and I went through the same thing. We both saw that fight. But my brother never got in any trouble. Never went to penitentiary. He was kind of just like a smooth sailing type dude, but I fell in every trap that was out there. because I was looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for affirmation from people, not realizing that I had love in my home, even though my parents didn't hug and we weren't like, the families on TV or even other families in my neighborhood. They both loved us, and they stayed there and they made sure that we, had clothes and food and all that kind of thing. And they would try to, both in their own ways, give us all that they could give us. And they wouldn't leave each other. But it was a long time before I really knew that my parents still loved each other. And that was harmful to me because I wanted my parents to be like hugging parents. And I just felt like my family was dysfunctional. And for a long time, I was mad at my parents. And I hated myself. And I remember that everybody in our neighborhood their parents were from Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee. Why you have to be from Jamaica? Everybody else's parents are from America. Why you have, I felt bad that my parents were different, that my mother was from Jamaica, that my father was much older. My father was a traveling musician, something that I didn't even appreciate, but he's the one who gave me my music. Really, because he tried to teach me how to play the trumpet when I was a kid, and he was always playing Sarah Vaughan and different music in the house. And, I got my music and my singing from listening to my father's music and stuff, and I didn't even appreciate my parents like I should have when I was younger, just because of the self-hate and the, back then people didn't even talk about getting no therapy. You just went to church. That was it. That's all the therapy you're going to get up in here is a church. People didn't even know about that, I don't think. But anyway, it kind of started from there, just not loving myself and wanting affirmation from outside people. And then getting raped, like trying to hang with girls that were cooler than me, trying to be with the cool girls. Got raped at my first school cutting party. Or not my first school cutting party, but the first school cutting party that I went to where my friends had set me up with a 19-year-old dude, and I'm like 12 or something like that. But I wanted that affirmation so much. And I didn't know that, everybody started coupling off into rooms, and he was holding my hand and telling me how cute I was and how much he liked me. And that was feeling kind of good. I liked it. Keep on talking. Yeah. And everybody started coupling off, going into rooms and stuff. And so I walked in the room with him, and that was like it. He was going to take it, Well, I guess he thought I wanted it. But I didn't, and I didn't really know that, dumbass, don't go in that room. You're going to get raped, But from that point on, it was just like I really, my self-hatred escalated. Plus, I got pregnant from that rape. And I had an abortion at like 20-something weeks. My mother had to take me to New York because I was too far gone by the time she found out I was pregnant. So it was just like one thing after another, with me. I just kept getting in more and more trouble. And then I meet this guy who really likes me. That's my first boyfriend that I was telling you about. And like I said, he had been in every bad boy's home in the state of Ohio. And he was going with the older woman who worked the streets. And eventually, that's how I got into, the street life from that. And it's just one thing after another. Recovered for a while. I was going to junior high school, had to go to summer school to pass all my classes, but I graduated from junior high school, went to high school. I was in this lady's talent shows. Did I tell y'all about the talent shows? This woman who was the lunch lady at our school in high school in the 9th grade, she had I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. She had a talent show, and everybody in Cleveland, Ohio, whether you were from the hood or the Heights, you wanted to be in this talent show because this lady was strict. I mean, people practiced. They had their steps down. They had all their little harmonies tight. They had their vocals together. People was doing steps back in them days. Them was the old school days. But anyway, I was singing in a group, and we were in this talent show. And I learned so much from that lady. And she was using that to keep us out of trouble and to give us something positive to strive for. And there's so many people who really did things, from being in her talent shows. But I think that gave me the spark of what I'm doing now, like using the performing arts in my community for collective empowerment. That's one way that one theme in my Black community literacies work. But I, was doing well for a while. Then I went to college and dropped out of college because I felt low self-esteem in college. I felt like everybody knew I was from the ghetto. I just had a chip on my shoulder, and it never really got addressed. So I got put out of Cleveland State, academically dismissed, and that's when I went back to the street life for like 6 or 7 years. And my addiction continually escalated until I was to the point where I don't know what they do around here, but in Cleveland, at that time, when you would see like people on drugs, girls on drugs, there were like certain areas that they were in, and they looked like they on drugs. I got to that point where I looked like Sideshow Bob. I mean, I was one of those people that you looked at and said, "Damn," and why is she doing that around here? You pulling over cars in a neighborhood where people live. I was down to the lowest low. And I couldn't stop. I just got to the point where all I was doing was shooting dope and drinking and going to jail and getting back out and going back. And, like that was my life. Getting beat up, jumping out of cars, getting stabbed, dudes trying to kill me, all of that. Going to dope houses and people telling me not to come back. And I'm like, okay, just sell me one more bag. I was just gone. Just gone. And I was starting to get pregnant, and that. The first time I got pregnant, I was pregnant by I knew who I was pregnant by. The second time I got pregnant, I did not know who I was pregnant by. That's how bad I had gotten. And I just wanted to die. And I was shooting dope. I had gone back home for a while. My mother let me come home. And then my addiction kicked in real bad. And I went back out on the streets when I was about 9 months pregnant, or 8 maybe, somewhere around in there. And I was shooting dope constantly. Never felt the baby move. And I was out there for like 2 more months or something. And the baby wasn't moving. So I was like, okay, now I can go to jail. Like I didn't know how to get out of it, right? And I was trying to think of how I can get out of it. Okay, I'm going to go to the hospital and they're going to find out that my baby is dead because I've been shooting dope back to back. And the baby is dead. They're going to put me in jail and then I can just live in jail. That was my mentality. That's how bad off I was. And I went over a friend's house and had him call an ambulance for me. They came and took me to the hospital. And, they did all these tests on me. And I kept telling all the doctors and everything, I know y'all going to press charges on me because I've been shooting dope. And I was showing them the tracks on my arm. I couldn't stop. And, I know y'all going to put me in jail. And thank you. Please put me in there because I know I killed this baby. And I deserve to die. I need to go to jail. My baby wasn't dead. I said, damn, it ain't dead. Okay, it got to be deformed. It's got to be messed up. Because all I've been doing is drinking and shooting dope. It got to be messed up. And when they see it's messed up, they still going to put me in jail. My plan's still working in my mind. They induced my labor. I had the baby, and nothing was wrong with the baby. Not one thing was wrong except she was a little underweight. And they told me I could go home. I said, I can go home? I don't want to go home. I'm scared I'm going to mess up this child's life. I don't need no baby. I can't be nobody's mother. But one thing led to another. And the first AA meeting that I went to, because I started going to meetings in the hospital. The first AA meeting I went to, the lady that was up there telling her story was a lady I used to buy dope from. And she looked like a man when she was selling dope because she dressed like a dude and she rocked hard like a dude on the corner because she had to because she was out there, selling. And she was up there looking like Lynn Whitfield or somebody, talking, giving her story. But I knew all the places she was talking about. And I went up to her after and I was like, did you used to sell dope? She said, yeah, I was like, what? She looked like a totally different person. Her son had been taken away. She had gotten her son back. She was doing good and looking good. I was like, damn, if this thing make you look like this sober thing make you look like this and make you get your life together, can you please be my sponsor? And I started rolling with her, and I just never got high again. Because by that time, I was so scared of myself. You know how and sometimes you be around people and they thinking that you can have a drink. You know, people, oh, girl, you can drink a beer. You've been sober a year. Get you a beer. Because I failed so many times before. I don't want nothing. I don't want nothing but some water and some fried chicken. That's what I want. But anyway, one thing led to another, and God just kept putting people in my path. And when I went back to school when my baby was 6 months old, and I've been going ever since. Yeah. Oh, she just now, that girl is something else. My baby that I thought I killed, she is 34, I think. And she has never given me a day's trouble. All her teachers always loved her. I mean, this girl just, I was giving my story in the women's prison in Ohio, and there was a lady in there that had a very similar story to me, and her daughter was in med school at OSU. This lady was in prison telling me how she had her baby in the prison. Like, she was smoking crack, and she was like, her baby was okay. But we had very similar stories. But anyway, God is real, y'all. I ain't trying to go too holy roller on y'all, but I just feel like if you live, God let you live for a reason to help somebody else.
Sorry, Dr.
It's time to go. Thanks, y'all. It's hard to tell that story, you know, and so much to it. But read the book and holler at me on Instagram. Thanks, y'all. So nice meeting you. Thank you. So where are we going now?
Back to the other building.
Oh, back to the other building.